Hi, I'm Craig Phillips. Welcome to my flooring trade tips. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install your own engineered wood flooring. And the tools and products you're going to need are engineered boards, handsaw, wooden mallet, claw hammer, moist detector, pencil and tape measure, trimming knife, set square, spacers, tapping block, pulling bar, underlay and duct tape. But the first thing you're going to need to do is prepare your surfaces. Start by hoovering the area to remove any debris, making sure it's clean and dust free. Also check closely that there's no screws standing proud if it's a wooden floor. Make sure that the subfloor you're laying onto meets the humidity requirements advised by the manufacturer's instructions. Now, whatever type of flooring you're fitting, you must make sure you can get the flooring, or the flooring is as level as possible. I'm running a spillet level across here, almost 2 meters in length. See, what you don't want is a dip in your floor. You put your spillet level across, and if that drops down about 3 millimeters, the risk is once all your floor is clicked together, somebody could walk on that, it drops the floor down a fraction and then unclick the actual connections, and that's what you don't want, of course. Once you've had your flooring delivered, make sure you store it nice and flat and not upright against the wall because of the risk of it bending. And you also need to leave it in the room that it's going to be installed for a minimum of 48 hours before you start to fit it. Whichever type of floor you're about to lay your new flooring on, whether it's concrete or wooden boards, it will require an underlay. This particular one I'm using is the gold one. It's 3 millimeters thick. Now, it is important to put the colours side down. It comes in different colours. I'll explain more about them in a moment. But you put the gold side down first. I'm just using a little bit of duct tape to hold that into position for the moment. I can tidy it up once I've trimmed it down. I'm just going to press that nice and snug into the actual skirting board, and using my trimming knife, trim that right the way down. A couple more pieces of duct tape. Now the second layer, again I'm going to butt it up to this skirting board here. I'm going to lap it on top of this section, which is probably about 150 millimeters overlap, where there is no actual foam on there. And by allowing that to lap over, it's going to stop any moisture, if there was moisture in the floor, penetrating its way through here. There is a little line, so it's got pre-adhesive already on it, but I'm just going to roll it down and cut it to size first. Once you've covered the whole area, run a continuous strip of duct tape over the joints to help seal the moisture barrier on the base of your underlay. Now, you have got a number of different choices when it comes to actually underlay. Here's just a small example. You have a 2 millimeter clear one, which is designed with no membrane on. You've also got a 2 millimeter one with a silver foil on the back, which has a membrane, which is going to help with any moist that may be in the ground. And then you have the gold one, which is a little bit thicker, that's 3 millimeters, and that also has the membrane on there. This helps if there's a few more little blemishes in the floor that just needs riding out. You have a thicker underlay. Now, the direction of your underlay is quite important. You can see I've laid mine this way because you want to have your boards perpendicular going the opposite direction. So of course I'm going to start here with my board working across that way, and I've put my underlay this particular way. Now, before you start installing your floor, it's very important about setting it out, because where you put your first plank dictates where the rest of them go on the whole area. Now, full plank size here, 1090 millimeters in length and 130 millimeters wide. Now, of course, we could just trim off this small lip off the back of it here and start off with a full plank against one corner and the back edge of the room, which is okay, but that could potentially be your first plank, depending on how big your room is. Of course, I've just built a little small demonstration area here. This second full plank then will be clipped into place, and that would leave me with around about 250 millimeters cut, which isn't satisfactory for the manufacturer's recommendations. They say minimum of a 500 mil cut piece in there. So I would then come back to here. We'd have to cut a section off this end, which is still okay. This piece will be more than 500 millimeters. We've got a full length here. If your room's bigger at home, you could have 3 or 4 full lengths, and then this end piece would be your 500 millimeter recommended cut, which of course would click into here and be placed there. What you've also got to consider with the measurement, whatever size room that you've got here, we must allow a minimum of a 10 millimeters expansion gap around all 4 sides of the room. So 10 millimeters less on that end, 10 millimeters less on this end. And then of course, once this starts to get installed, we can put our spacers around this back wall here and pull it down. But that is the length actually sorted out. You've also got to consider the width of the room. We don't want to start with a full board here, work our way down and get to the other end and find we've got a little small slither. Again, the manufacturers recommend that you want a minimum of 70 millimeters for that last row across there. So I'm going to take a measurement of my floor here. Of course, you must do the calculations up on your own floor at home. These planks are 130 millimeters wide. I've got 1.8, so we're talking I've got 13 full planks. I'm going to be left with about 25 millimeters to 30 millimeters, which is not acceptable. So what I must do now is cut down about 50 millimeters off the back end of all 3 of these planks. So once I cut my 50 millimeters off this full first row on here, that will be added on to my last row of planks, and that'll give me above and beyond the manufacturer's recommendation. So that's the cuts done on my first row, both to length and width. The next stage is I'm going to get my spacers, which are like a chalk shape like this. By placing 2 of them together will allow me to build up the gap of about 10 millimeters that I need for the expansion gap. Now the beauty about these is you can slide them up and down and make your gap a little bit bigger or smaller if you've got any discrepancies in the actual wall itself. And I will be having them along the both ends here once I get a couple more rows of planks in. So that's in position now. The next stage is to start marking up and cutting down the second row of planks. The first piece I'm going to use is the offcut off this end here. Remember, we wanted our 500 mil piece here. That's cut off there. It's brought straight down to this end because it has already got a straight cut there. I'm going to allow for my 10 millimeter gap, and I'm just going to place it on. I'm not clicking it in just yet. Place it on there. I can get a couple more of my spacers and wedge those in here. And then I will get a full plank. Now what, again, the manufacturers would always recommend, when you're laying your planks, open up at least 3 boxes and keep taking one out of a different box when you're installing them, because you might find you get a tiny bit of variation in the appearance of the actual wooden grain on here. So I spin that round, place in, slide it along, just get that joint meeting so it's nice and snug. So full plank in there, which leaves me with a cut piece here. I'm going to get one out of that box. Again, placing that into position. Now I've got a couple of options of measuring this up and actually cutting it. Of course, this is not a real house with a wall here, which I wouldn't be able to do that. So what I could do is actually take the plank like this, place it upside down with my 10 millimeter expansion gap here, take my pencil, marking it just where the top section meets this last plank here. Transfer that across, cut it down, and then that will spin back around, click into position, and I'll have my 10 millimeter gap at that end. So how the click system works is each panel has got 4 edges on there, and they need to interlock in with all the surrounding boards around it. So if we look closely here, one section has got a little lip on it, and that allows it to slide into this section, and once it's pressed together, clicked, pressed, and then tapped, of course, they squeeze together. It acts like an anchor and stops the actual wood coming apart that way. So we'll loosen them back up. I'll take this one, place it in about 20 to 30 degrees, putting a little bit of weight on the back of it. I'm giving it a bit of a wobble and I'm just placing it on a gentle tap on it and it's clicked into position. And I'm just going to place a tapping block here and give that a gentle little tap. My spacers at the back is going to stop that sliding back, and that's now nice and secure on here. So I get my full piece, put it in there, slide it along so it's butt up to here. Gentle little tap, the wooden mallet on the tapping block, both ends. Just making sure that this click together system is really easy. You just wobble it in a fraction like that, line it up with this joint here, and then knock him down, tap and block on it, and it is as easy as that. You can also put a couple more little spaces in the back just to secure that up if needed. Now I could start with a full plank here. The joints are staggered there, which would work well. And in a larger room, different plank, this would work. But of course, my small set here, just for demonstration purposes, is going to leave me with a piece there which will be a little bit small. So what I am going to do is, very like my first row here, I'm just going to cut off probably about 100 millimeters off there to give me that 500 millimeter piece at the end.
Once you've finished fitting your first 2 to 3 rows, repeat the process, making sure you're staggering each joint by around 250 millimeters. Ensure that the final cut and the beginning of each row exceeds 500 millimeters, whilst also maintaining your 10 millimeter expansion gap around all edges. Please do check the full manufacturer's guidelines before attempting your installation, as some flooring products may require slightly different specifications.
So my floor is almost complete, except for the last course, which also needs cutting, just like my very first one. So I'm going to take a measurement of that, and I've got a gap here of about 82 millimeters in there. So I'm going to cut a plank around about 70 millimeters wide, which complies, of course, to the manufacturer's recommendations and still leaves me that 10 millimeter expansion gap. Now, fitting that last plank can be a little bit tricky, but these pulling bars really help. Once it's interlocked in there, it allows that to hook around the back, and then of course you can hammer this with your claw hammer and it pulls it and allows it to click into position. So my last piece now is going in to complete the floor. One little gentle tap down first, and then put the pulling bar hooked behind the back and tapping it in. And that's all my planks now laid. So now all that's left for me to do is remove all of my spacers around all 4 sides, and then you need to cover the actual expansion gap, and you can do that very easily by using a scotia bead. This is fixed to the actual skirting boards itself to allow any movement to happen within the floor. Now, hopefully I've inspired you to install your own engineered wood flooring. If you're looking for more inspiration or how-to videos, or want to know more about the products, why not visit the website flooringmountain.co.uk.